Hey guys, welcome back to episode 7 of Unmasking Shame. So today is the mask of sex. Ooh, the S word. Okay, so I didn't plan anything for this one today because I wanted to just wing it because I want this to be as raw and as emotional for me as possible because I feel like this is one of the areas that I haven't fully processed myself and I'm still moving through it. So for me to be able to bring forth my rawness and my authentic thoughts and feelings about this, I think is going to be more valuable. So we'll see how it goes. So about 5 months ago, I put out a video called Gay Men, Sex Addiction, and the Lack of True Connection in the Gay Community. I want to kind of build off of that video because I feel like that's why this work started for me. That's why I started to do this work, because I was feeling so frustrated and angry at the gay community for being so hypersexualized and for not having capacity to move into deeper realms. So basically the video is about sex addiction and how we're overcompensating in the physical for not meeting our needs, emotional, spiritual, and mental. So our physical is like huge, and then these other ones, we don't feel safe to show up in who we are in these areas because that's too deep, that's too close to home. That's somebody seeing us and seeing our realness. So we it freaks us out because if we get rejected for that, that's the deepest wound that we could ever experience. But if we bring forth our body, our physical body, our sex, that's still a vulnerable experience and it still can be intimate, but it tends to be a safer experience for us because it's only the physical body to which we're sharing, right? So the shared element in all of this stuff is the fear of rejection. Okay, that's what is so, that's really what the mask of sex is overcompensating for. We don't feel safe to bring these other areas over to somebody else because we fear rejection. So we bring forward the safest aspect of ourselves as possible. What ends up happening with the mask of sex is we develop an overcompensatory factor for intimacy in this one area. So that's what we use to meet our needs. So one of the most frustrating things for me is, I've evolved beyond this, okay? And I spent many, for me, this was about, I'm moving into probably my 4th year now of like not having random hookups as much at least. Everybody has needs that we need to fulfill, but I'm not doing it from a place of just kind of low self-worth and just disrespect for my body. I'm actually being more methodical in these processes. But coming from this place of just feeling lonely in the gay community. That's where that video came from. And I know people that watched it, they're like, wow, that was so raw. And I've never seen you bring forth so much emotion, because I was frustrated. And I still am a bit frustrated with the community because there's this hypersexuality that I find it just puts me off. Like I get random messages, I get butthole pictures, I get all these, in my opinion, it's rude and it's invasive to me, because it's like I have a desire and I've done the work to get myself to a place where I have a desire to connect with people on a deeper level, and then I have these people throwing their hypersexuality at me, and it becomes overwhelming for me. That's my lower consciousness. My higher consciousness gets it. Okay, it understands where these people are coming from. They have these urges and these desires to connect, and they don't know how to do it in a safe and deep and intimate way, so they do it in this way. It becomes addictive, it becomes compulsive. So that's the way we learn to meet our needs, okay? And then there's the biological and the anatomical aspects of sex. And yes, we all get horny, we all have these urges. So there's that component too, which I understand. I'm a human being, I have these same urges as well. But it's important to look at it through the lens of, you can still be sex positive, but you don't need to close the door to these other experiences that are going to bring you meaningful connection, that's going to bring you more joy in your life, right? And 9 times out of 10, when you start to move into this area and do this work and you move over into having connection with people, your sex addiction will be gone. Your masturbation addiction will be gone. Your porn addiction will be gone, because you're finding the thing that you're actually looking for in these behaviors, which is connection, right? Connection is the cure to addiction. I've done addiction work for 10 years, and it is the cure for addiction. It's the cure for shame. It's the cure for anxiety, depression, all those things. Connection is everything, because we're hardwired as human beings to connect with each other. And that's how healing, that's how love is formed, that's how all these things occur, right? So one of the biggest things I noticed with gay men is a deep, deep sense of loneliness. And we all feel alone in our experience because we come into this world feeling alone because we feel so different than everybody else. It perpetuates as we get older, and then we find these ways to mask that, which is one of the masks is sex. Okay, so that's the undertones of this all. That we need to understand that if we want to move away from being compulsive in our sexual desires and learning how to meet these needs in a healthy and balanced way. Right? So how to start to shift away from using the mask of sex? First and foremost, we need to be mindful of our impulsive desires, right? As gay men and as men in general, we're very impulsive when it comes to sex. We just want it now. We tend to think with the wrong head, and we're right in it, right? What I've had to learn as a man is how to slow things down, right? How to be gradual, because that's really where we learn how to share in a connection with somebody, how to develop respect for somebody, and how to develop true intimacy, right? We slow it down, we get to know somebody, we go on a date or two, we have conversations, right? We don't just hop into sex. And this is, for me, why random hookups are so unfulfilling, because there's no framework to build from. There's no safety, there's no trust, there's no capacity for the other person to know what you want. And at the same time, in a hookup, I have a real hard time setting boundaries. And boundaries are essential for good quality intimacy and sex, right? Because when I first meet somebody, I don't feel safe to set boundaries with them, because I don't want them to be offended or hurt or reject me or whatever it is. So you'll start to notice that as you take things slow, you're going to feel a lot safer to take your mask off. And not just the mask of sex, you'll feel safer to take off all your masks. Because as you go slow, you start to trust and you start to feel safe and you start to be able to hold space for one another. And this is key. Okay, this is also probably going to be the hardest thing for most gay men, because we're so used to seeing someone that's hot, having them come over to our house, and whatever. It just happens so quick. Okay, but if we really want to do this work, we're going to need to slow things down. That really is, at the end of the day, the biggest thing. The other aspect of taking off the mask of sex is going to be being creative, in my opinion. What can you do to meet these desires that you have for sex and connection in other ways, right? The first thing that we need to do is we need to actually take it down from, because when I do this work with a lot of gay men, they're like, but I have these desires. It's sexual, it's just physical. You know what I mean? They don't actually make the connection at first that they're doing this as a way to compensate for not feeling safe in these other areas, right? So that's going to be the number one thing you're going to want to pay attention to is, why do I have these urges and desires, right? Before you masturbate, before you watch porn, before you have sex, pay attention to what's happening in your body, right? In your body experience is going to be where your truth resides. The mind creates imagery. The mind creates memory of past and it can anticipate future. So we start to use this mental imagery as a way to engage with these sexual thoughts. They get us ramped up, they get us horny and all this sort of stuff. But what we need to pay attention to is it is just your mind that's having that experience and creating that experience for you. As you learn present moment awareness and you learn to drop down into your body, you're going to recognize that your body doesn't necessarily want what your mind wants. You're creating an experience for your body that it doesn't want. And for me, I got to a point where my body rejected having random sex. It actually rejected it. I would feel nervous, I would feel anxious, I would feel yucky after I would do it, and before I would do it, I would feel very nervous. And I started to develop just an inability to connect with men on this real shallow surface level, and I yearned for more. I went through a period of about 2 years where I suffered significantly because I was like, what is going on with me? Like, I have always been so sex interested, and I had no interest in sex, and I thought I was like turning into some asexual creature. But what it was is I was yearning for a deeper sense of intimacy, and it's something more meaningful in my connections with others. And it took me a good couple years to make this transition occur. And I would say that was probably the hardest aspect of it, because I felt so frustrated with the gay community that I'm like, why am I not able to find these men that want to share in these connections with me? But it was because I hadn't completed this transformation. I didn't understand the idea of slowing down the process. As soon as I started to slow down the process, guess who started to show up in my life? Men that also wanted to slow down. But if I was, it's dissonance, right? If you have one desire and you have an opposing desire, mind, body, that's usually what it is. You're confusing the people that you're trying to attract. They don't understand what you want because you're sending out mixed messages. So it took me a while to transition over to the honoring the body state and being able to be in this place where I no longer desire to have these shallow connections with people, and then people started to show up in my life that I was able to start to practice intimacy and practice taking things slow with. So that's the biggest message I wanted to send today. Keep in mind, all of this stuff is about shame, right? So what is driving your behaviors? Shame, right? 9 times out of 10, it's going to be shame. And when we start to make the transition and we start to heal some of this stuff, we start to become motivated for love and respect for ourselves, specifically our bodies, right? So if we're in a place of shame, we're going to come from a place of low self-worth. We won't feel safe to share boundaries. We're not going to feel safe to speak our truth. We're not going to feel safe to show up in who we are behind our masks. So that's really important to recognize on this journey as well. So recognize it. And in this work, there's less to do and there's more to just be, right? The awareness that you have and you cultivate on this journey, trust that is the awareness that's going to shift everything for you, right? You don't need to be doing all this stuff like journaling and going to therapy and all this stuff. That stuff is great, but the best gift you can give yourself is the gift of presence, right? Watch your internal process. Watch your thoughts as they take place. And if you don't understand what I mean by that, ask yourself, who is the person that is able to watch myself think? We all have that ability to watch ourselves think. Otherwise, I would not be able to know what I just said out loud or what I just thought, right? We have two entities in our being. And so pay attention to that and be the presence underneath your thinking and watch some of this stuff take place, and you'll be able to make some really cool shifts in your consciousness. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Sending you tons of love. Bye.